And welcome to the Multiversal Omnibus, the place James Gunn got all his notes. Yeah, we wish. James Gunn and Peter Safran have unveiled their DC slate. The chapter one, Gods and Monsters, is what we're calling the chapter. I like the idea of chapters. And with me to talk about it is Jordan Wigand. Jordan, I am super excited about this. This is a DC and Marvel show, but let's be honest, we're talking about DC Studios tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And DC Studios alone, they earned a week of strict DC talk. So, yeah, how you doing tonight, Jordan?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back on.
All right. We also have Goose in the studio. She will be part of the show as long as she behaves. She doesn't really know what to do with the setup I have down here. She's a lapdog. So if she behaves, Goose will be here. Hopefully, you don't hear any heavy breathing from this little pug monster. This is the monster of the God and Monsters. So yeah, I'm really excited about this, Jordan. Let me ask you, what project are you most excited about going forward before we look at the overall slate?
Yeah, geez, I feel like that's a tough question. I would say that Superman Legacy, I would say, is probably number one for me. But since I felt like we already knew about that, I'll pick a different answer and say I'm really excited for Booster Gold.
Yeah, I like the idea of Booster Gold. I think it's going to be hilarious. Booster Gold's a character that the general audience might not be that familiar with, but especially DC animated, there's some fun stuff with him. Love me some Booster Gold. I wouldn't actually mind if Donald Faison played him. He was cast to play Booster Gold in the last two episodes of Legends of Tomorrow, and he actually did a pretty good
Oh,
job, in
really?
my opinion. Yeah, it was kind of a different take on Booster Gold, and I thought he nailed the essence of the character, the goofy kind of wannabe superhero. So I wouldn't mind Donald Faison continuing as Booster Gold, but we got a long way to go before that even gets casted. My most anticipated project is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And the reason is because I think the fact that you're going to have that. I told you this was an honorable mention for one of my top 10 books. I think it was a great book, and I think it's going to round out the Kryptonian mythos in DC. I think Superman is going to be this bright light, and I think Supergirl is going to, like James Gunn, a little more jaded. I think she'll be a little sardonic. I think she's going to round out the Kryptonian mythos, and I think you're going to have Kryptonian goodness for everybody. So I'm really excited about that. I think that comic book was absolutely brilliant, and I really hope they do a nice adaptation of it. Um, it's a recent run, so I was surprised to see that on there. But I'm not hating on it at all. So that's my most anticipated because I knew I was going to get Superman. I knew I was going to get Batman. We have a lot to talk about with that. But and we had a hunch we were going to get Green Lanterns. That was a popular thought. So when I saw Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, I said, Kara Zor-El is having her moment. I love it. So that's where I went with my most anticipated. But I like that we both picked one off the beaten path a little bit. We didn't go all the way to the Authority or Creature Commandos, but yeah, that's pretty cool. What are your thoughts of Creature Commandos kicking everything off? Our first new thing that we didn't know was coming before January 31st, animated show. What are your thoughts about that, and how much do you know about the source material?
Next to nothing. Next to nothing.
We're in the same boat there.
But, Jeff Snyder put out a tweet about who the main characters are. So I know not everyone had this, but it looks like it's confirmed that we have Rick Flag Sr., which is very interesting. And Jeff Snyder said in his report that he will appear in other DC projects. Nina Mazursky, Dr. Phosphorus, Eric Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, who's going to be the lead of Creature Commandos, GI Robot, and Weasel are going to be Creature Commandos. So I think it's very interesting. When I looked it up, like DC Universe has one comic that's actually called Creature Commandos. But in the New 52, Frankenstein did have a run with Agents of Shade, and a lot of these people are in that lineup. So I would think that they're probably borrowing more from that than um, Creature Commandos.
That's actually really interesting. There, leave it to James Gunn to give us a bunch of homework to do in terms of comic book reading. And the good thing about this is we have some time before all this comes because we already had a 2023 slate and they have to produce all this stuff. The Authority is the other one. I have absolutely no clue about the Authority. I'm hearing it's like The Boys. I'm hearing that it's a group of misfits who think they can do it better than the good guys or something like that. I'm hoping that's DC's answer to The Boys, and we get a different tone. I wonder what kind of audience that's going to have. I'm really excited about it just because anytime you get a smaller comic book thing into the mainstream, I think it's great for the creators of the comics, and it's great for DC as a whole to really round out its roster in live action.
I mean, have we ever had Kevin Feige come out on Twitter and post, here are the comics that we are basing the tone off of it of, and promoting the comics as much as James Gunn is? We've seen pictures of James Gunn reading the Batman and Robin thing that actually ended up being Brave and the Bold that we'll talk about later. We've seen him take pictures of him reading All-Star Superman. We've seen him today tweet out, here's 4 of the things that we are basing our tone off of. And we already know, I think Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, right, is I think already sold out on Amazon for the trade. So, I mean, these things are going to sell, and that's going to help the state of the comic industry. And I think having somebody who's in charge of a studio actively promoting the comics as much as he is can really only help continue to grow. It's not like when we got Civil War for Marvel and everybody was like, kind of like, Civil War is like a hate it or love it comic run. It's an event that some people don't really like. And really, when you see it on screen, it's not anything like the comic at all. But in this, James was very open with, it doesn't mean we're adapting these, but this is kind of what we're getting the tone from. This is what we're getting the vibe from. And I think people now will go out and buy those. I mean, I've added most of this stuff to my DC Universe Infinite subscription to try to read through some of this stuff. Because like you, I have no knowledge of the Authority. I've heard of them. I haven't read them. But now I'm thinking I will, and try to see as I'm reading it, okay, how is this going to fit in with the overall DC universe? Because, this was a standalone thing that was on an imprint that then has been recently folded in to DC, so much that Superman even had a comic recently called Superman and the Authority, where he teams up with them. So, it's very interesting to see how these are going to kind of fold in to the larger DC story, because Gunn has said multiple times now when he's talking about it, the story is going to trump everything.
And that's exactly something that I think is so perfect. You want an interconnected story, but you don't want an interconnected story for interconnected sake. I think Marvel does that a little too much, where they say this is the ball of yarn and the ball of yarn is the only important thing. I think you're going to get a really wide ranging tone and feel of the DCU. But the cool thing is James Gunn is a super fan. He is a fan who just happens to be running the studio. Having a fan in charge is awesome because instead of what do we do? Do we do things for the fans or do we do things for the general audience? I definitely see in this plan general audience friendly things, but there's a lot of fan service that's going to go on because James Gunn is a fan. I don't think people understand that we haven't ever had a fan running the show. Like Kevin Feige likes comic books fine. He's a creative, great. James Gunn gets down into the nitty gritty. I will bet money. I will bet money that James Gunn has more comic book knowledge than any executive in any studio that does these kind of movies. I think James Gunn is going to be an absolute brilliant creator of this universe. And I am my faith in him has been rewarded because like we kept saying, let's tone down our expectations. We're not going to get that much. And and the way that he did it, he showed the press, and almost nothing leaked, and had some details here and there,
Yeah,
and
'cause they
almost
had an
nothing.
NDA. Yeah, they had like
Yeah,
a NDA or what's it called?
there was a moratorium. You couldn't talk
Yeah,
about it
yeah,
until
12 o'clock.
DC. Yep. And look, that to me showed he's got his ducks in a row. They know what they're doing. They know what they're about. And the fact that we have a plan and we're just calling this chapter one. And by the way, there's a project that they said they couldn't unveil because it would give too much away. We're going to play a little game in a little bit on what we think that project is. But I'm telling you that James Gunn as a fan is so important because I think he's treating us the right way because he's been invested in DC long before he was in charge of DC. And when he talks about the varying qualities of the movies and he talks about all it's not like he wasn't watching this stuff. It's not like he wasn't reading the comics. This guy probably has a comic book collection the size of his house. I love James Gunn for all of this. And every doubt I ever had in him really is washed away. I'm not trying to be a sycophant here, but it's hard not to be impressed with the organization of DC Studios and what him and Peter Safran are doing, and the excitement level that he has. His video and that excitement that he showed, and the happiness he seems to show when he's talking about this. I really am excited about the comic book side of this thing all coming together. So I think what you said about when's the last time we had a guy um, say, look at the comics that we are taking inspiration from. I think that shows you that we have a fan running everything. So excited. Couldn't agree with you more. Now I want to ask you about Batman the Brave and the Bold
Mm-hmm.
because this is going to take up a big chunk of our conversation. I have a feel. You're skipping to Damian Wayne. Does that mean we have the Bat family fully fledged? I think so. I think that's what I'm gathering. And what kind of story do you think we're going to get out of Batman Brave and the Bold? And how is it going to differ from Matt Reeves' The Batman in tone?
That's a good question. So, I mean, you had sent me a question last week, right? And we didn't get to it, but it was what I don't want, right? From
Mm-hmm.
the DC slate. And what I said is, if we are getting a separate Batman from Reeves, I don't want a Batman similar to his. I want a more comic booky Batman. And while I love the Batman, if we're getting two, I want two totally different takes. And I feel like we're getting that, right? I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they did exactly what I wanted. We're going to be able to differentiate them. They're not going to create too much confusion in the general public because I think they're so very different. And uh, I think the Bat family exists as a whole. James Gunn has said in interviews that he felt like they've been kind of on the sideline too long. I'm assuming that means I don't think they would skip Dick Grayson because I think they see potential for Nightwing in this and doing a Titans movie or doing um something where Nightwing can kind of step up and either have his own film, have a TV show, something that where he can kind of connect because
Mhm.
he isn't just a Robin, right? He's a Robin that becomes something more. And I think that is pretty good. I think that we'll have them. They've talked about doing a Batgirl at some time in this universe. So and that's the bad thing about this, is that there are so many of these quotes just spread around 20 articles that you have to try to read them all to figure out what what they said at the press junket. But because it's not in this Hollywood Reporter I'm reading. But yes, he's alluded to the Bat family existing. They're alluding to bringing Batgirl in at some point. So in my opinion, we're just skipping to Damian because we don't have 20 years to get to Damian, right?
Mhm.
Like we don't have. I don't know. It would probably take actually 15 years if you're going to do actual. Because even if you did a movie for every Robin, it's still 2 to 3 years between movies, and it just takes way too long. So we've 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 seen some of these characters in other things, right? We've seen Dick Grayson in Titans, the TV show. We've seen, I mean, they even had Jason Todd, right? I'm not sure if they had Tim Drake because I didn't finish Titans, but they've been in other projects before that it's like, okay, we've had takes on them. We can bring them in established, but nobody's touched Damian yet. So if we're going to stand out, we're going to stand out with bringing Damian. And I think with the way Gunn says this, it is a very strange father and son story. There's a lot you can work with that. We've never seen Bruce as a father in film, and seeing how he will grasp that. And I do think the Bat family can fit in here because they can kind of be like, you kind of raised us, Bruce, but what are you going to do when it's your actual kid? And the fact that the kid is an assassin when Batman's rule is to not kill is this fun little back and forth that they can have. And I think that'll very much set it apart from the Reeves films. And I'm actually very excited for it. I mean, we could get this as soon as 2026 is what I'm hearing, which is 3 years away. Which is just insanity.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun when the casting for everything starts. We're going to have a lot of fun with the casting. And um, my biggest question for this, I think it's most people's biggest question, is how, because we want to start fan casting for things, because it's the sickness we can't stop doing. Is how old is Batman in this? And how old is Damian in this? He said he didn't know about him for 8 to 10 years. Does that mean we're looking at a 10-year-old kid? I think he probably moved more like 12, 13 if we're going to go that young.
I think it might be a 10-year-old kid, maybe a 13-year-old actor. I think you could probably do that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I worry that you're going to get Batman with a Stranger Things kind of a vibe. Like
I'm
early
thinking
Stranger,
more
yeah.
Kick-Ass. Have you seen Kick-Ass?
Yes, Kick-Ass.
With Chloe
Mhm.
Mortis? She was super young when she did that one.
Yeah,
I'm thinking it
that's
could
an
be that.
interesting take. That's an interesting take. I wonder how the general audience is going to take Robin, and that's always been the big bugaboo that's kept Robin out of the movies. I think if you have a setup where Nightwing is his mentor, who is the middleman between him and his dad, that would work very well because then you get an older brother. Um, I I wonder how much time in the movie can be devoted to all the other characters. So I think I think it could be like you just get hints that they're there, and then as the movies go on, you get more of the Bat family. I would bet that if the Batman Brave and the Bold is successful, the movie is going to focus on Batman and Damian Wayne, and then I bet you get TV series in Chapter Two of the Bat Family. That would be my guess because I think the Bat Family is set up very well for TV, and Batman is the big cow, the moneymaker. So I think Damian and Bruce are the stars of the show. That seems to be the direction they're going. But to have the Bat Family at all is super exciting. Batman is my favorite character in any medium. So I just I want it to be different than the I want it to be different, but what I don't want it to be is to be the goofy Adam Westish Batman. I don't want a Thor Love and Thunder kind of a Batman. I want a Batman that is serious and dark, but maybe doesn't go all the way off the rails the way that Matt Reeves does in his universe. I think that's going to be grounded and gritty, and this will be. You're still going to have a dark tone because it's Batman. You can't. It's not going to be like a Superman movie, but I think it's going to be very comic booky, and I think the villains they choose are going to be a lot of fun. I think you're leading into League of Assassins the second you bring Damian Wayne in, Talia al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul, and then that opens up a whole world of villains that you can go into, and I think you're going to get the street crime and the gangs and the Penguin and Two Face in that Reeves universe. It's going to be fun to have two Batmans going. I hope we get the Batman Part 3 because having two Batmans going at the same time, to me, sounds like perfect world. I can't get enough Batman. Batman Brave and the Bold, very interested on tone. I don't want it to be for kids. I want it to be accessible by kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it'll be PG-13. I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be for kids either. You're going to deal with dark subject matter with just the fact that Damian is an assassin, and as James Gunn says, a little son of a bitch, right? So I do think we'll get the best of both worlds here. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if Part 2 is it for the Batman. I would not be shocked, just because I don't know if they do actually think having two versions is sustainable. But I also wouldn't be shocked if Matt Reeves is really taking inspiration from The Godfather. I think it was a long time between 2 and 3, and people don't usually have the best opinion of 3, I think, right? So maybe he just goes out and says, this is what I'm doing, but the press said at least one more Batman movie, which is that, but we're also getting the Penguin crossover. Maybe we get the Arkham series or not. I mean, that's kind of been such in limbo. I'm not even sure anymore.
I wouldn't hold your breath in the Arkham series.
I wouldn't think
get
so.
It'd get a little complicated if you had that much Batman material before Batman Brave and the Bold. So I wouldn't hold your breath on that one.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I think we'll get, Matt Reeves retweet it the way that it was worded, I think in the Hollywood Reporter or Variety, where it says, epic crime saga, right? So it does seem like maybe we are just going to get the mob crime side of things on the Batman. And I think maybe now you could do stuff like Clayface,
Mr. Freeze
with Brave and the Bold. Like, you can get the more fantastical stuff.
The Batman Part 2 logo has been made blue by fans for a long time, hinting Mr. Freeze, and then they went with the blue for the official stuff too. So are we getting to Mr. Freeze in Part 2? Is that okay? Okay. Am I reading too much into it?
I don't think they officially put out blue for the official page. I haven't seen that, but I know fans have done it. But no, I don't think Reeves even wants to touch Mr. Freeze, honestly. And I don't think we're going to get Robin either. I think we're just going to get early Batman taking on the crime, the mob stuff.
You know how Matt Reeves met with James Gunn? You almost wonder if Matt Reeves was like, can you please do a Robin? Just do a Robin. I don't want to. Please. They're asking for it. Please, just anybody, any of them. I don't care. Dick Grayson, Jason Todd. Hell, throw Damian in there. Go for it, James.
Right. I think it was more the opposite. I think James was like, you're not going to touch Robin, right?
Oh, so
And
you,
Reeves was like,
yeah,
no, I don't have
yeah,
plans for Robin. He's like, all right, then mine is going to be differentiated with Robin.
yeah. Robin is definitely going to make things different. I have been
And I
craving
think
the Bat Family, so I'm glad one of them are doing.
I think the Bat Family can work nowadays more than any other days. I feel like people are. You said you worry about people like the general public not accepting them. I think those days are gone. I mean, we have people accepting Rocket Raccoon and Groot. They're gonna be able to
Yeah,
accept Robin,
but Robin
Nightwing.
as a kid is the thing that worries me with the general audience.
Robin's always been a kid, right? I
I
mean,
understand that, but that's why he hasn't been in the movies. There's been a clear reason he hasn't been in the movies. Chris O'Donnell was not the age that Dick Grayson should have been in that movie.
well, no, Hollywood never hires kids. That's why. I don't think it has anything to do with fans not accepting kids. I think for some reason people equate Robin with the 66 series and they always associate it with them being like gay partners. And it's not what they are, right? But
Yeah.
people make jokes about that stuff and his little underwear he wears. So I can see that is why people haven't touched it. And then people got the wrong vibe when Chris O'Donnell played him, which I grew up with that, so I was fine. But I think people got the wrong vibe of that's when the movies turned out getting worse for the general public, and they just associated that with, well, they added in all the Bat Family. But it's
Well,
not the
yeah.
reason why they got worse, is because they started getting real corny, like real over the top.
So
You have Mr.
Batman
Freeze
and
playing hockey with a bomb and all that. That kind of stuff is what made it worse.
so there once Batman 89 happened, Batman became disassociated with camp. And once you made Batman dark, serious, realistic, once you made Batman a ominous character, a guy of the shadows, all the camp stopped working. Batman 89, that was a franchise that cannibalized itself. They hit gold of 89, then Batman Returns, it was too dark, they couldn't sell toys, they were freaking out. So then the Schumacher movies just went in the opposite direction as far as they could go. And they sold a lot of toys, but they ruined Batman on film until Christopher Nolan turned it back around.
Yeah, and then Christopher Nolan didn't want to touch Robin, and it just made more people think it can't be done, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about having Bat Family in there. I'm hoping we can get Batgirl as well, because Batgirl is one of my favorite characters. I think Barbara Gordon is an awesome character, but also Stephanie Brown and Cassie Kane deserve their moment in the spotlight too. The Batman family has so many great characters. I tend to wonder. I tend to wonder if you're going to get Joker in Brave and the Bold. Do you start because nobody's ever started out with Joker?
No, I don't think so. And the reason I would say no is because I guess this is where the meeting with Reeves comes in, right? Reeves set up Joker in part 1. Does he plan on touching him in part 2? If so, that's only a year before Brave and the Bold, right? So I can't see Joker coming in at that point. I think Joker will already be. I think you could just say he's in Arkham, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I think you could probably get away with that. I think you're more on the money of the villains are probably gonna be League of Assassins, Talia and Raish. Like I think they're gonna focus on that.
I would love a League of Assassins Batman movie where Talia al Ghul isn't a wasted character. We could do a whole. Between our takes on The Dark Knight Rises, we could probably do a whole podcast of the problems of that movie. I enjoy it, but it's not great. The more it's aged very poorly. But Talia al Ghul is a character that I think when you see the Batman and how well Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman works with Robert Pattinson, I think you're like, well, why not have a Talia al Ghul in the DCU? Because Batman needs a love interest other than Catwoman for for the sake of, well, come on. Talia al Ghul is a very interesting character. She's kind of the gray. She can be presented as full-fledged League of Assassins, or she can kind of be the middleman, middle woman between Batman and Ra's al Ghul. There's a lot of different ways you could go with Talia, and there's a lot of different ways she's gone in the comics. So that brings a lot of fun possibility.
Well, yeah, imagine if Damian has to team up with his dad to fight his mom and his grandfather. Like that kind of stuff, it creates this whole weird, almost like incestuous family dynamic of, you know, just this inner family dynamic of, oh, we have to. I can imagine some good quips and some good fun moments. Damian being conflicted, Talia being conflicted, you know, but Batman really not being conflicted, him being like, you know, this is you're doing something wrong here. I got to stop it. So I feel like
Batman's going to have to pull Damian out of the League of Assassins mindset. That's the whole Batman Damian Wayne storyline. Batman has to fix what Talia and his grandfather Ra's al Ghul started, because they trained Damian to be an assassin. I mean, he is a cold-blooded killer who the thing that I would like more than anything, because one of my biggest gripes with Batman is bad writers for Batman are easy to spot because they don't give Batman a personality and they think he's a one-note character. Batman has a lot of heart, and good writers get the heart out of Batman. What I would love is this stoic Batman to be the one who brings the light into a Robin, other than the other way around, because Robin has always been created to keep Batman from going to the dark. Tim Drake came to Batman after Jason died because you need a Robin, or else you're going to slip off into darkness. The Dark Knight Returns is a story that's basically Batman fell off the edge, and Carrie Kelly's Robin gives him hope again. So wouldn't it be interesting if you flip that and Batman is the thing that brings humanity and light and hope and goodness to his son? Wouldn't it be cool if for once we got Batman as a good father? Because there's so much more to Batman. Batman has the biggest heart in comics, and writers too often make him this gruff one-line sigh, punch, go in the corner and mope. And that is not what Batman does. So when a good Batman writer is on this project, which I can only imagine who's going to do this, I can't imagine James Gunn would hire one of those one-note Batman writers. That's my take with Batman and Damian. That's what I want to see, because that's the one thing that Batman hasn't been allowed to do with Damian in pretty much anything. And that's the one thing when I read Damian, I just go, come on, Bruce, you got this. You got this.
Yeah, it's you know, Batman is a father, right? Even before Damian comes in, he helped raise Dick, right? And Dick does see him as a father. So there is that relationship there, and he is able to raise Dick to become a hero, right? Into Nightwing. He's able to foster that and have that relationship grow and have this boy thrive when he grows up. And I think he can do the same thing for Damian. And I think that'll be kind of the crux of the movie, right? It'll be interesting to see if it's going to be Damian's already Robin, or if it starts with him getting him out of the League of Assassins and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they take that and kind of foster their relationship. You know, is it something where he's already under the tutelage of his father for a year at that point, and then he's still learning not to be his assassin mindset? Or is it, I rescued my kid from this, you know, disaster, and now I have to try to rewire his brain? You know, like that's where I wonder how they'll go with, you know, are we jumping in with Damian already as Robin, or is it going to be the origin of Damian?
Yeah, they can do a lot with that. I really like the idea of having Damian already established and then kind of feeding in
Me too.
feeding in the backstory, because I think you can get more done in a movie if if everyone's already in their character spot. I also think you're going to see a lot of anti-origin story. I don't think origin stories are needed. I think they are a thing that it used to be you had to have an origin story to present a character because the audience needed to know what they were getting into. But it almost became a thing where the origin stories were wastes of time. These big bucks productions when you can throw all of the fun stuff for the second movie. That's why you got Spider-Man 2 being one of the best movies, because they didn't have to do all the stuff they had to do in the beginning. It was back when Sony started, or back Marvel 2002. Maguire. But now I don't think I think we're so tired of seeing Martha die, seeing Thomas die, Uncle Ben die. Nobody dies anymore. And then when you got, not to go into Marvel, but then when Aunt May died in Spider-Man No Way Home, it was so impactful because it wasn't wasted on an origin story. It was tied into the story that they were telling, and it catapulted the plot, and it gave the characters emotions that,
The annoying thing with
yeah.
that is when everybody said we don't want Uncle Ben to die again, and then when we
Mhm.
skip that and everybody's like, well, where's Uncle Ben? Where's Uncle Ben?
Yeah.
And it's like, you just said you didn't want to see it again, and we're moving on. We just saw it in 2012 with Amazing Spider-Man.
I
No
know
Way
I
Home.
can't watch it again.
Homecoming was 2017. That's only 5
Yeah.
years after the last time Uncle Ben died. We didn't need to see it. We just
Mhm.
move on.
And
It's great.
I think
With
it's
this,
anti-origin story.
with this, I assume most of these projects are not going to be origins. I think Booster will. I do
Mhm.
think we might see him establishing himself as a hero in our time, with maybe flashbacks to him in the future, but his past, right? But I think most of these are going to be uh the heroes or the people with powers are already established. Even the authority might already
Mhm.
be established, but maybe they're just teaming up for the first time. Um, Lanterns obviously are established because we have both John and Hal. So this might be their first time teaming up together or something, or maybe they already have that playful repertoire, of a
Mhm.
buddy cop film. I think you're right. I think most of these are going to be, we're dropping in, and I think we said this last week. We don't really need origins. Drop us in. We're good to go. Everybody knows who Robin is. They're going to learn that it's his son from either previews or just the context of the movie. They don't need that spelled out. You don't need Batman's origin. I bet you we're not getting any flashbacks to Batman's origin in Brave and the Bold. James Gunn knows what works. He's just going to hit the ground running with that. So, yeah, I mean, I think most of these projects are set up in a way where they're just able to kind of say, no origins. We're just like, I'm sure Swamp Thing will already be in doing whatever he's doing for his movie.
Yeah, I think Booster Gold will probably be the most likely one to have an origin story, but I think the origin story could be wrapped up in flashbacks, very much like Peacemaker. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know he was part of the Suicide Squad, but Peacemaker's character didn't really start development until the show Peacemaker. And you got flashbacks that gave you a lot of insight on why we're here today and why he's wearing this stupid shiny helmet. Um, and I really like the idea of Booster Gold being the comedic thing, because when you're looking at the slate and what it's sandwiched in between, we could need that comedic fun thing, that lighthearted thing. And there has to be lighthearted stuff. There has to be serious stuff. What I like about this is if we restored the Snyderverse, we would just get that tone, that color palette, that darkness, and then what do you have? So here you have a cohesive plan, and the amount of things you're going to be able to do. I think what they're going to be able to do with Lost Paradise, the Wonder Woman prequel, before Wonder Woman, Themyscira, Paradise Island, setting it up, probably going to be heavy in the mythology of the gods. They're calling this Game of Thrones, but with Themyscira. That sounds like an HBO kind of wheelhouse. I think they know exactly what they want to do there. I will bet money a dragon comes out. I'm kind of joking, but they know what they want to do with that kind of stuff, and I think they're well suited to do it. A Wonder Woman prequel could make Wonder Woman's character that much better, and it buys you time to figure out what the hell you're doing with Gal Gadot.
Well, I think what else it also does is this chapter's gods and monsters. We're going to see some gods here. We're going to see, whatever what he said, right? With Green Lantern is they're discovering a mystery that is part of the whole big story that they're doing. Well, what if it's something that they also faced in Paradise Lost, right? Like there could be this thing that is has caused problems before that maybe the Amazonians had already fought off. Um, there's ways that you can do this. I know some people said it doesn't seem like these are connected enough, but I think they're hiding the connection. Obviously, I think they're hiding the connection because they want you to unravel it along with the lanterns when it comes out. If they just tell you what links all of these projects together, it's pointless, right? Like I like that they're letting us discover this ourselves when we get the lantern. And maybe that has something to do with that project you mentioned where they said if the title was released, we would already know what it's about.
I think I have. I'm not the only one who thinks this. This is a popular idea. I've heard a lot of people say it. I'm going to add on to it. I think it's World's Finest. I think it is Superman and Batman teaming up on something. I could see the Joker or Metropolis or something of that kind of effect. I think you're going to get something because Batman and Superman need to be friends in this universe. They need to be friends, and they don't need to be friends because why did you say that name? I hate making fun of BVS because I do love it, but they need to be friends in this universe for this to work. Because the way it works in the Justice League is your two leaders are Batman and Superman, and maybe Wonder Woman, but your two leaders are Batman and Superman. And the only reason they trust Batman is because they all trust Superman, and Superman trusts Batman. If you don't have that dichotomy, I don't think the Justice League works. Superman needs to bring Batman in, not Batman bringing Superman in. In my opinion, what do you think about that?
I think we'll eventually get World's Finest. I don't think that's the thing that they said would be too spoiler heavy. I think whatever they think it is something that actually ties all of this together. I listened to like 5 podcasts today, by the way. I think somebody, forget what show, said, what if it was Blackest Night, right? And they're building up to that story arc, right? And maybe that's what the Lanterns discover, because that is something that's tied in with Green Lantern as a whole. So could be something like that. Maybe it's like a Justice League Blackest Night movie. Maybe it's a Green Lantern movie called Blackest Night. Maybe it is not that at all. But, maybe it's something more to deal with the monsters and the gods themselves. But I can't think about what that is. Like, I don't think I have enough knowledge on the monster side to be able to say this is the monster that they're dealing with.
It could very easily be a New Gods project, something to do with Apocalypse. And maybe the Green Lantern show is what builds towards that kind of a thing. It would be ballsy if James Gunn said, "Oh, you want Darkseid Invasion? We're going to give it to you. We're just not going to give you the Snyderverse." I think that would be incredibly ballsy. And you know what? All roads are going to lead to Darkseid some way or the other because in the DC universe, I don't. To quote Thanos, "I am inevitable." Well, I'm Darkseid. Darkseid is the biggest and baddest threat the DC universe has to a world that has Superman. So
I think they won't. I don't think they'll touch it at all. I think they look at the fact that it's already kind of been touched on very slightly with Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think that they
painfully slightly.
Yeah, I don't think they will, and I think they'll try to avoid the comparisons to Thanos, even though Darkseid was created first, right? But I don't see James going that way for whatever reason. I think he's gonna do something just totally different.
So all right, so
I never thought Starro. I never thought Starro would be in the Suicide Squad. So, I think he'll pull something maybe a little bit more obscure, but also.
Well, I'm trying to think of the galactic cosmic way they can go. I heard I think it was the Vigilante 1939 podcast said something about the Anti-Monitor. I think that was the podcast that mentioned the Anti-Monitor could be a big villain. There's got to be something. I get the vibe that the Green Lanterns are going to find the big bad. That's my thing. I think the big bad coming from space. Although Peter Safran did say you can't just have good guys, bad guys from space, good guys win. You can't just have that repeated cycle. So maybe it's we're doing a bad guy that has nothing to do with
I don't think
the
it's
galactic stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to deal with space because they said Lanterns was a very terrestrial story. So maybe whatever they discover here has been on Earth for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, like I said, maybe Paradise Lost deals with the same threat, or, maybe that's just talking about the gods.
What if Ares is the big bad of the DC First Justice League? Look, what if Ares, the god of war, is the big? I'm just trying to figure out who are the Justice League going to fight the first time they join together, and what brings them together. I'm grasping at any straw I can, because we were in grasp straws mode, and now we have all these things right there. And we have all these things. We have so many answers. So then you start going, okay, now we have answers. What are the next? You start asking the questions of the next answers. It's going to be a wild ride. I will tell you that 2024 is going to be a tough year to be a DC fan, because 2025 is so appetizing. And 2024, you're only going to get Joker, Creature Commandos probably, and maybe the Waller show, but that might be 2025. Waller. That might be 2025 too. What I do like is they didn't tell us a bunch of dates, but one date they told us, July 11, 2025, Superman Legacy. We should probably talk about some Superman Legacy. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like you said, this is the only one with a date other than the Batman Part 2, which is Elseworlds. But what I like about that is James has been saying they're not going to spend $250 million on a movie that's only 2/3 of the script done, and they're going to not try to force release dates. That's why none of these have release dates. They're going to let this stuff come organically. I'm sure they have some release dates in the back of their mind, but they're not going to just do it to hit it. He knows how that works. He's seen how movies start with a script sometime. I mean, The Rise of Skywalker is huge for that, right? They started that. J.J. Abrams is coming up with it on the fly at times. They're deciding, is Rey a Skywalker? Is she not? Is she a Palpatine? Is she not? They're deciding that on the day. They're doing multiple takes of that.
Right, and then you come up with something that doesn't please anybody.
I liked it. But anyway.
I enjoyed it, but okay. I enjoyed Rise of Skywalker. Way off subject. I enjoyed Rise of Skywalker, but I don't know that it was good. Does that make sense?
I guess. I mean, I do think it's good, but I'm partial to that, but I can see how people have problems with it. And I can see how I don't like that Disney jumped into Star Wars and said, no plan, and just went nuts.
But that's exactly what your point is. I was trying to embellish your point, trying to make your point a little bit more for you. I wasn't trying to get off the rails.
They already have the plan.
Mm-hmm. The plan is key.
On the plan.
Story is king.
And they're not going to start filming if the script's not ready.
Mm-hmm. I like the fact that they're looking at this from a storyteller's point of view. They're not looking at this as entertainment. They're looking at this as storytelling. And I think it's very cool. What Peter Safran said about the Superman Legacy movie has me excited. He said, Superman is kindness in a world that views kindness as old fashioned. Take my money. It's going to be a Clark Kent. We're going to fall in love with Clark Kent's story. Take my money. Superman is going to be the bright light in this world. What I loved about Zack Snyder's Man of Steel was that, and Batman versus Superman, was that the world didn't know how to take Superman, and the world was cynical, and he was paradoxical. He was polarizing, and I thought that was very realistic. But in this, you're going to get a dark and gloomy world. That's just reality. That's just reality. But you're going to get Superman being the bright light. You're going to get Superman being the symbol of hope. You're going to get Superman being the reason for happiness, excitement, all of this stuff. He's going to inspire people instead of being this gloomy, oh, I don't know if I can be the world's angel thing.
Christ-like figure.
I am so. What did I tell you last time? Clark is a friend, not as an angel. That is the way they have to go. And I'm so excited about Superman Legacy because Superman needs to feel like he feels. This sounds wrong. Superman needs to come off the way he does in comics, where he. One of my favorite stories is Batman Noel, and in there it's like a Christmas Carol, and Superman plays the ghost of Christmas present, basically. And Superman is drawn, everything is dark and shadowy, and Superman is just radiates light. It's just like, and the idea about it is Superman should always sparkle. Not like Robert Pattinson in Twilight, but you know what I mean. Superman should always, Superman, the sun and Superman are one. The sun powers him. There should always be just shine to Superman and bright, optimistic. So the way that everything I'm hearing, and people say it's going to be, oh, it's going to be a James Gunn movie. Guys, I'm telling you, he gets it. He gets it, and he has reverence for Superman. He's a Superman. He was reading All Star Superman and drinking coffee. I think he doesn't know what Superman needs to be. Guys, couldn't be more excited for Superman Legacy. That's my takeaway. Boom. Take my money. Take my money. I'll be there. Advanced screening if I can. I will be there. First chance I get, I will be there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds perfect, right? It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's old-fashioned perfect. The American way part is the only thing that could get me a little tentative. I don't want him to be this American soldier Superman. I want him to be a Superman for the world. Other than that,
it's written by James Gunn, right?
Yeah,
it's not going to be like fascist Superman type thing,
right?
But I think with that, obviously the slogan just changed. I think that is what still most people think it is. That was Safran saying that, so I wouldn't be shocked if.
I also think they want to get the old fans. I think they want to get the old fans that were turned away from Henry Cavill. The problem with Superman is that it's weaponized. You can talk about Christopher Reeve and Superman 78, and that's all they want. They just want that again. And then people say, oh, we want a different Superman. You give them a different Superman, and it's the end of all existence. You change Superman. You can't change Superman. He's an icon. Fans are never going to be happy make a good movie. But the whole thing is a 4-quadrant Superman film is what we're hearing. We're hearing 4-quadrant Superman. This is the movie to start it off. Everyone's invited. Everyone's invited to the greatest story ever told. Let's go. That's where I'm taking this. Superman Legacy, I could not be more excited for. When Man of Steel hit, I liked Superman, but I wasn't a huge Superman fan. Then I started reading more Superman comics, and I became really the guy who loves Superman. I know you've had a similar thing where Superman becomes more and more your favorite. I think you've said.
Yeah. I mean, I think as like teens, we're always usually drawn to the brooding Batman, because we're going through hormones, we're going through, you know, some of the feelings we associate with Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like as I get older, it is just Superman that speaks to me more, because I think, especially nowadays with social media and everything, you were just talking about, Superman being a ray of light in, an awful world. Like, if I wanted cynicism, I would go online, right? Because Twitter is full of it, right? And it's not like, it's just bad faith arguments most of the time. I saw people, some trying to start stuff about this saying old fashioned, as if that was a bad thing. And I saw some people twisting Gunn's words on purpose for some of this stuff. And it's like, when were we just not kind to each other, right? Just like seeing each other on the street, being able to just say hi, being kind to each other. Now, obviously, there were things, people equate that with old fashionism, but if you go back in the past, people sucked in the 50s as well, right? And there was civil rights not going on at that time. There was all this awful stuff. But what we're equating with old-fashioned kindness is just kind of like what the kids like to say, go out and touch grass, right? Get offline, go outside and interact with people, and be humane, and that is what Superman stands for. He will care for anyone. He will save anyone. He'll save his worst enemy, because it is just who he is. And that, I think, speaks to me more and more, especially as I get older and you see how cynical people can be, and you go online and you see how everything's either the greatest thing ever or the worst thing ever, and nobody just being kind to people doing hashtag fire James Gunn the first day. Let's just give some grace. Let's be kind to each other. And that's what Superman stands for. And I like that.
Yeah, I think we hit on Superman Legacy pretty perfectly. I'm super excited about that. Is there a project that we haven't talked about enough? Maybe Swamp Thing. What are your thoughts on Swamp Thing? Are you excited for this? And what kind of expectations do you put on a Swamp Thing project?
I'm not too familiar with Swamp Thing. Horror has never really been my thing. So if it is a horror film, I'll go see it. But I'm not sure it'll be my groove. But I don't know. I'm excited for everyone that is a Swamp Thing person. I've added the Alan Moore books to my read list, so I'll read it and see if I can. But I've never read any Swamp Thing, and I never watched the show that was on like CW and DC.
Well, it started on DC Universe, and they put it out, and then literally they canceled it that day. So I never watched it because I was like, okay, it's one season and it's already over. So they cannibalized that. They said, no, we're gonna eat our own path from there. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing is something I've shamefully not read. I've seen a good bit of Swamp Thing kind of spattered across DC Universe. He was actually really funny on the Harley Quinn animated show with Poison Ivy. That was like not a canon kind of take on Swamp Thing, but just a goofy, funny thing. He pops up every now and then on some of the DC animated stuff. I don't know as much about Swamp Thing either. I'm excited that they are adding horror, though. I want it to be more like Stranger Things horror, where it's good story with horror elements than a straight up horror movie.
Yeah.
But I'm excited that I keep saying this. I'm excited that they're rounding it out. And Swamp Thing's always been that thing that I need to learn more about. I need to read more of. So I'm excited about it just because I think it's probably a historic character whose fan base doesn't get enough love, doesn't get anything to go off of. So Swamp Thing's got a fan base. Alan Moore will probably hate it because he hates everything.
He is such a grump.
Well, that's why I think he's so good at this deconstructive, like cynical storytelling. But he hates everything
Yeah,
that
he hates everything he ever wrote. I mean,
yeah, he's like, oh, you like what I did? You're an idiot.
yeah, pretty much.
That's his shtick. Is there a project we haven't talked about yet?
I guess we didn't really talk too much about Supergirl.
Yeah, I told you it was my most anticipated.
Yeah.
That was a great comic book run, and that comic book run I read digitally. I never got the trade because I read it digitally. It's one of the few things that I've read digitally that I haven't gotten a physical copy of. I will tell you because if I like something, I do get the trade.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that, and I prefer to do trade before I go online, to be honest with you. But that one, I was just like, I read about it, and I was like, that sounds good. It's a space western. It is. It's Supergirl's character in that is so well written. She's heroic and hopeful, and she never gives up. But she's also knows how the world is. She's a little jaded. She's a little over beat. Oh, look at me, I'm Supergirl. She's not the Boy Scout that Clark is. She's not a Girl Scout. And I really like her. I like the tone of that story. I think it's well balanced. And Ruthie, I hope we get a live action Ruthie. She is a character Tom King uh, introduced in that, who's her companion through the basically through they go to planet to planet. Yeah, I'm excited for it. As a Supergirl fan, I'd like Supergirl to get a start in the DC universe, and I'd like it to start changing the direction they go with her in the comics because she's got a weird history with comics. She's got a weird history. She does, there's what when you talk Supergirl, which Supergirl are you talking about? Which continuity are you
Yeah,
talking
you have
about?
Power Girl too, right? Which is
Yeah.
her on another Earth. You got all kinds of stuff. But
Mhm.
what I like about this, because I haven't read the comic yet, I'm going to read it. But
Mhm.
what I like about this is that it would be obvious that they would have different upbringings, right? Like I like how he
Mhm.
says we will see the difference between Superman, who was raised by loving parents, versus Supergirl, raised on a rock, a chip off of Krypton, and who watched everyone around her die, which is something that would change you, right? It would change,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the nature versus nurture argument, which we also kind of get with Damien when we get back, Brave and the Bold. So those are kind of cool things. But what I really love about it is, and why I think that we will definitely get the whole Bat family is if we're getting Supergirl, right?
Mhm.
I don't think is as well known. I mean, she had the show, but CW shows are not watched as well as like
Yeah, and the show
normal
really
shows.
dropped off at a certain point. I watched every episode, and there were times where that was a chore.
Yeah.
There were times where I'm like, I'm watching the show because it's a show I watch, and I knew it was bad one season when I had 5 of them ready to watch on my DVR,
Yeah.
and I was
And
like,
they pile up.
and you're like, okay, so you're like, all right, I'll watch Supergirl, and look, it started off great. Its ending was just there was a scene where that was written and it was just so stupid. I don't even want to get into it. It just the CW had Melissa Benoist was perfect as Supergirl. Her and Kyler Lay and the guy who did I forget the actor's name who did Martian Manhunter uh, were fantastic. The show. mm, There were times when it was great. There were times when it was great. But like you said, it would be nice if you got Supergirl on an actual mainstream audience.
Yeah. And, I think it can work. I think she can be popular. And what else I like is that he has already assembled a group of writers for this whole story, right? You have Drew Goddard, Christina Hodson, who wrote The Flash, Jeremy Slater, Watchmen writer Crystal Henry, Tom King, who this book is based off of, and he wrote Batman. He's written tons of comic characters. He is also included in this writer's room with Gunn going over this whole story. So I feel pretty good that it wasn't just like him and Peter Safran picking out stuff. He brought in these people and said, let's make the best story we can. And I'm sure some of them will get passes on the scripts. I'm sure some people will say, hey, I think, this can get, maybe they'll have some sort of say on who gets hired on it. Or maybe they're just like, we drew up the big plan and now Gunn is going to enact it with hiring the right people. But
and Safran's going to have a lot to do with that part of it.
Oh, yeah. Safran will have his say as well. But what you said about it just being focused on the story, this is because we have a writer at the head of DC Studios with Peter Safran being the money guy and the executive. You have James Gunn who's able to come in and say, I'm a writer first. I'm a writer and director first, and I'm a storyteller, and I am going to approach this from the sense of a story and not when can we hit this date. That's going to be Peter's side of things, I bet, is the executive producer stuff of picking a date, making sure it hits the date, but not doing any of that until they have everything lined up.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Let's see. Give me your 3 things you're happiest about right now. 3 things you're happiest about Gods and Monsters Chapter 1.
I'm happy that we are getting Robin. A Robin. I'm very happy that we are getting, that we'll have Booster Gold comedy side of things. I love time travel, so that stuff's great. And I would say probably just having the Lanterns, who I feel like have been on the sidelines for too long, finally coming. By the time this thing probably airs in 2025, 2026, you're looking at 14, 15 years from the Ryan Reynolds movie.
I think there's enough space there.
That's a long time. And the fact that this Berlanti Green Lantern show was taking forever, it was announced in like 2018, 2019, and it's 4 years later, and they were still working on it until like late 2022, and it got shelved.
And I think the budget for Berlanti's Green Lantern wasn't worth it. Because do Green Lantern right, it has to be. And Berlanti does mostly CW stuff, I believe. Big part of the Arrowverse. Look, I think the Green Lantern show is going to be amazing. It's gonna be a beautiful show. It's going to have great CGI, and it's going to leave you wanting more each episode. I love that it's a show because I feel like it's less of a risk that Green Lantern is a show than a movie, because you can pick up some momentum on a show. You can get people buzzing from week to week. And with a movie, it's they better like it, and they better like it in the first 2 weekends, or you are screwed. And if they're a big part of your universe, what are you going to do?
Well, that's what I really like about it, even being based on Earth, right? They don't have to spend as much money to do space scenes. They're going to be able to keep the budget lower for Earth-based stuff that maybe if it's low risk, it's very low risk, because I'm sure it will be not as costly. And if it's popular, they can say season 2 is taking place in space. They can say
it could be a movie at that point. Yeah.
Giving it a movie, like they would know it's a hit at that point. But if you're going to immediately launch into space with it, it's going to be costly. It's going to, even with today's technology, like The Mandalorian with the volume, people complain about how that looks sometimes, even though it's Star Wars on a great budget. But Warner Brothers doesn't have the money right now. They don't. So if they can do a cheaper series that is, I mean, cheaper, not like looking cheap, but they'll have budget. They said an event HBO type series. But if you can do that without it costing, I mean, I've read this stuff on on my other show. Aquaman has somehow ballooned to like $260 million budget. Black Adam was at like 250.
Oh, Black Adam's budget is insane because there are scenes where I'm like, where did the money go? I love Black Adam. I thought Black Adam was fun, but
when you have something that high, when you have something that high in cost, it is a lot more effort to get it to be profitable.
Exactly. And who greenlit that? Who made that decision? Well, don't get me started with Dwayne Johnson right now. I'm so glad he didn't win the war to get $7 control of DC, because we wouldn't be getting Gods and Monsters. We'd be getting 3 movies. The first movie would be titled Dwayne. The second movie would be titled The Rock. And the third movie would be titled Johnson. And they would just have to be like, oh, I guess we'll show up as a Rock movie. No.
It would be Black Adam versus Superman, Black Adam versus the Justice League.
Yeah.
Black Adam minus Shazam because he didn't want to deal with that. Like it would not be cohesive.
No, it would be a mess. So the 3 things I'm happiest for are Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Supergirl getting her moment in the sun, and becoming a big player. I want Supergirl to be part of the Justice League stuff. So hopefully we get that. 2, Bat Family. Getting Bat Family, getting Damian and Bruce, Batman Brave and the Bold. I'm going to get 2 Batmans, and I'm going to get everything I want out of both of them if they do this right. I'm going to get all Batman represented on screen. That's going to be great. And the third thing I'm most happy about is that there's shows and movies. It's not just big budget movies that have to be successful or else the end of the world hits. There's shows in there. There's multiple ways of storytelling. There's going to be multiple genres in horror with Swamp Thing. I'm so excited of the approach they're taking and the fact that they have a plan in general. So those are the 3 things that I'm really happy about going into Gods and Monsters Chapter 1.
Yeah, I think those are great things to look forward to.
All right. I guess we've covered everything pretty well. We're going to keep talking about this in other episodes, but we're going to leave it off on that, I think. I got something coming up near 8 o'clock, and we've really had a lot of fun today. Thank you for joining me, Jordan. It was an absolute blast. Any last comments, questions, or concerns about this wonderful slate we got?
I believe in James Gunn.
I believe in Gotham. I believe in James Gunn too. While we're at it, I believe in Harvey Dent. I really, really appreciate this. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah. Well, if you want to hit up my Twitter for my podcast about DC, it is at Elseworlds DC Fan. And I have a Marvel podcast as well that is at TO Infinity Saga. The full title is To the Infinity Saga and Beyond. And yeah, she doesn't like that. But yeah. I'm talking all things DC and Marvel.
Yep, that's why we're ending the show. All right, thanks for joining us. And this concludes the Multiversal Omnibus. Jordan, you're the rock star. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.